Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now, this is the N version of the vehicle, but the buttons are going to be the same for the most part because this is the N trim. You've got a few extra custom buttons down there, and then the N Grin Boost mode as well. So that's the one that's going to unlock the truest performance in the vehicle. But outside of that, the rest of the buttons are going to be the same across the Ioniq 5 lineup. So let's dive in. First thing I'm going to point out is that the steering wheel inside the vehicle is heated. So just down by your right knee on the climate control settings, you can push there in order to turn the heated steering wheel on. There are two separate levels for the wheel, and it's heated all the way around. The steering wheel is also manual telescoping. So just by your left knee there, there's a release. Go in, out, up and down to create that perfect position. Once you find it, click it, lock it back into place. And then utilizing the left stick, you can figure out what's going on with your lamps. I recommend for the most part just being in the auto mode. But when you're in the auto mode, you can pull towards you in order to flash your high beams. But turning the high beams on permanently has to be done along the mode on the top there. So you go to the top light mode, push away for those high beams, pull towards you to turn them off. When you're in the auto mode, what's going to happen with your high beams is they'll turn on automatically as needed. If the vehicle recognizes somebody's oncoming, it's going to dim them before bringing them right back on again. And then you can also utilize the blind spot view monitor. Absolutely love that. So it utilizes the side-mounted cameras in order to show you what's going on right inside of your blind spot. It's not standard across the vehicle lineup, but it is a very useful feature for the vehicles that do have it. And then the stick along the right-hand side is going to be for your wipers. So you can move up and down this way, go into one of the hyper modes. When you're in the auto mode, you can also adjust how fast the rain's hitting the windshield by moving up and down this way. You can also use this in order to turn on your rear wiper. So the tip of that stick to adjust the rear wiper. You're going to pull towards you for the front wiper fluid, and you're going to push away to get that rear wiper fluid going. Just by your left knee, there are also a series of switches. So there's one where you can adjust the brightness of the screen there as well. And then a boatload of other options. So you've got paddles as well. So you've got your plus on the left-hand side, minus on the right-hand side, and that's going to let you jump in between a few different options. So as you go through, you're going to have level 0 up to your I pedal or your 1-pedal drive. When you're in those drive modes, very useful. So if level 0, I want you to think of it like there's next to no resistance. So you take your foot off the accelerator and you slow down very gradually. Versus the I pedal or the 1-pedal drive, you take your foot off the accelerator and you slow down very, very rapidly. It's a really useful one, but it's the maximum regenerative braking that you end up getting. Really useful. You've got a boatload of other buttons that are available as well. So we've got this button, and that's going to be your voice command prompt. So you'll be able to do things like change songs, radio stations, navigate using your voice. You can open the trunk if you want to, adjust your climate. There are so many different things. Hold on. Look at this. So many different things that you can do. So what I recommend is when you first get your Hyundai, go through, as I said, there are so many different things that you can do, setting date and time, so many different options. So really get the hang of it because it is a very useful system. You can answer or hang up on a phone call. You've got the volume rocker here as well, and you can push in the middle in order to be able to mute. From there, you've got this button so that you've got two custom buttons here, and you can adjust them through the screen itself. So you hit the setup button, and then you've got your unique buttons. So there's one down the center stack there, and then there are two unique buttons on the steering wheel. And it's what did these unique buttons on the steering wheel do? So on the star one, you've got the flexibility of having it go to your home screen, canceling a route, go to your EV settings and things like that, versus the top mode button instead. This one is going to let you change between all of your active sources. So whatever sources you tend to listen to, make sure that those are enabled, and then you can tweak your sources out by hitting that. If we hop into media for a second, actually, I guess the other one to look at is going to be the up-down switch here. So as a default on this one, it's going to let you change your station, and then you've also got the flexibility of using it to change your frequency. So this is where I was going. If we go into media for a second, and FM, if we move up and down, you can see it's jumping between all of the available stations, and then all of your available favorites there as well. So if you were off your station there, it would jump you between all of your available stations, so the ones that you've favorited. But if you want to walk through on the infotainment system to figure out how to set up your presets and things like that, you'll find that walkthrough down in the description of this video. So many options here. The buttons on the left-hand side here, you've got a series of different ones. So this top one is going to be to turn on your smart cruise control. So that's the adaptive cruise control system. Unfortunately, you don't have traditional cruise as well. It's strictly going to be the smart cruise option. But if you want to walk through of seeing how that's done live, you'll find it down in the description. But once it's toggled on as you're driving, you can push up to set your speed, and then you can either decrease or increase 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. If you do a push and hold up, that's going to set you plus or minus 10 at a time. So 10 kilometers or 10 miles. You can pause in the middle you can press in the middle, I should say, to pause, push to resume. You can also hit the brake if you want to be able to pause, and same idea, up to resume again there. Then there's a distance indicator. So it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. There are 4 unique levels. I normally would recommend for the levels to go level 1 on residential streets, and in my opinion, level 2 on highways tends to work the best. But that one's going to be a matter of preference. And then you've got this one, which is a lane center or lane follow assist. So it's not a soft driving car, but when you've got all of these systems enabled, it gets really, really close. It's not fully hands-free. You can leave your hands off the wheel for a few seconds before you get a message telling you to put your hands back on again, but it's a very useful system. So as long as it recognizes the lane markings, keeps you perfectly balanced in your lane. So it's amazing. You've got the flexibility through the infotainment system to adjust the reaction time and speed up time and things like that as well. And then from there, you've got these 2 buttons, and that's going to be to navigate through the actual cluster screen. But before we get there, this is the end version of the vehicle. So there are a few other buttons. So regardless of the version of the Ioniq 5 that you're in, you'll always have the drive mode selector. So you can change between eco, normal versus a sport mode instead. And as you do that, you'll see that your range also changes. So when you're in the eco mode, the best possible economy versus when you're in the sport mode, the worst possible economy. And that gets even worse when you're in the NGB mode, so that grid boost mode as well. But the boost mode, amazing. You're going to smile if you ever do end up getting into an Ioniq 5N and using it. It's a brilliant system. Through the infotainment system, you also do have the option of adjusting the cluster screen a tiny little bit. So as of right now, you've got the classic style versus simple, and then the N style. So the N style is strictly going to be for the N trim level of the vehicle. But you've got the flexibility to adjust it out a few different ways. I'll explain all the cluster screen and how they work in just a second. Then you can link it to different drive modes. So let's say if you love the look of the sport mode, but you want to be in eco driving, you've got the flexibility to be able to do that. So it's super straightforward there. Oh, the other one is going to be cluster head-up display. So there's other things that you can change out here as well, but I will touch on that one in just a second as we zoom in. Then there are also 2 unique buttons down here. And same idea, you have the flexibility through your buttons layout to adjust what these 2 buttons do. This is, again, specifically for the N. So this one, you can select your custom N mode there if you want to. From there, you've also got the option of adjusting this one. So I have this one set up for launch control. These things work really, really well. And then you can have these ones set up custom. So the right versus the left, what do you want it to do? And then this is the N grin mode. That's the one that unlocks the truest performance inside of the N version of the vehicle. 601 horsepower, bumps it up to 640 plus, and then you also get an extra 20 plus pound-feet of torque when you use it. It is a very, very beautiful system. Absolutely love it. But zoom in and I'll show you a few things that you need to know about the cluster screen. So you've got your parking brake there. You can toggle it off just down by your left knee. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it right there. Bottom left-hand side. So you're going to hit the brake and you're going to push in to turn it off or pull towards you in order to turn that brake on instead. You've got what current drive mode you're in, vehicle's ready to drive, your outside temperature, what gear you're currently in. So whether that's park, reverse, neutral, drive, etc. And on that one, the stick, in order to do that, it's really neat. Like, rather than having a traditional hand shifter, column shifter, it's shift by wire down here. So you twist up to go into drive, flip down a bit for neutral, all the way back for reverse, and then park on that side as well. So it's relatively straightforward using it. But, as I said, gear selector there, and then you've also got your current kilometers or miles till empty. You can adjust the measurement units themselves through the infotainment system. So in your setup, you're going to go to your general settings, and then you've got units, and then from there you can change between kilometers versus miles this way. You can also adjust whether you're in Celsius or Fahrenheit. You can adjust your kilometers per 100, whatever the case may be, or if you were in miles, etc. And then how do you want your tire pressure measured, your torque measured on top of that. So many, like I said, so many things. And then you've got your different gauges. So this is obviously going to be your traditional speedometer. And then this is, I want to say, like your traditional tachometer. So as you put your foot down, you're going to use power. When you brake, if you brake hard, your charge level is going to go down there. So you're essentially going to be regenerative braking. And that, again, ties into your one pedal, I-pedal drive, whatever the case may be. So I-pedal, you take your foot off the accelerator, you slow down very rapidly, and you capture the maximum amount of charge. Versus on the level 1, 0, whatever the case may be, you slow down, and you're not going to capture quite as much charge in comparison. You've also got your current odometer reading along the bottom right-hand side. From there, you've got a series of other options for the screen here. So a few different things for the trip counter. So your current trip is from when the vehicle is last turned on. From there, you've got after charge. So if you've charged the vehicle up, how much have you used since you last charged the vehicle? And then since your last reset. Anyone that says okay to reset, you could just push and hold the middle there, so the okay button, in order to reset it back to 0. But think of that as a few different trip counters. So trip counter since you've turned the vehicle on, since you've charged, and then your total trip counter instead. From there, you've got your active tire pressure, and you saw you've got the flexibility to adjust the measurement unit there. Which wheel is getting which amount of power? This is the all-wheel drive version of the vehicle, which is why you have all 4 wheels. If you were rear-wheel drive, you'd just be able to see the 2. But as you start to drive, you're going to notice that each wheel gets a different amount of power. When you're just cruising on the highway, predominantly rear wheels, versus all-wheel, etc., as you're speeding up. From there, you've also got your current temperature for both the front and the rear motor. Lap timers are available there as well, so if you're taking the vehicle on the track, you can see how fast versus how slow you're going instead. And then there's also a G-force calculator there. You can push the little button there in order to get to your route. And as of right now, so no route set, but you can see what direction we're currently facing. If you had an active route going, let's set something up here. And we're going to go to, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Why not? So you can see there 2 different routes, the fastest or the most economical. So let's guidance, and look at that. Not full mapping cluster, but that's pretty useful. And then if you look inside of the head-up display, you can even see what's currently going on with your route there. So you can see your current speed. If you had navigation going, it's turn-by-turn directions there as well. Road speed and a few other options too. So really useful with that head-up display, but I'll touch on the display again in just a moment. Swiping down from there gives you nothing until you exit out. And again, back to just our regular route. We can push there in order to get to a series of different settings available. So you hit OK there. And as you do that, it's going to activate a boatload of different things inside of the infotainment system. So driver assistance settings, convenience settings, door, lights, keypad, things like that. But like I said, if you want a full walkthrough on the infotainment system, you'll find it down in the description of the video. But you can adjust so many settings. You've got driver convenience settings that are available. Adjust your smart cruise control. So that's where you're going to adjust your reaction speed, acceleration speed, things like that. You can adjust your driver safety, driver attention warning, lead vehicle departure. So if you start to drive, if you come down to a complete stop and the car in front of you starts driving, it's going to let you know on the cluster screen that the leading vehicle's departed if you haven't started moving yet. So there are a lot of cool safety settings that you've got available inside the vehicle, and that's just going to be based off of what you have set up there. But the only other thing to point out is going to be the head-up display inside the vehicle. So I did point out that the head-up display is there. And as we go through the infotainment system, I want to show you a few different things here. So with the head-up display, you can either toggle it on versus toggle it off. You can also adjust it. So you'd have the flexibility to be able to rotate the display. You can move it up and down as well in order to be able to make it easier to see. And then you can also adjust the brightness. Now, one thing that I will point out inside the vehicle is that if you are wearing polarized sunglasses, it makes it very, very challenging to see the head-up display. So even though this is set to maximum brightness, it's going to be challenging to see. You can still kind of see it, but it is fairly tricky to see. And then you'd also have the flexibility of figuring out which content are going to be showing in the vehicle. So turn-by-turn directions are there, driver assistance information, blind spot system, whether or not that one shows up as well. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you'll get a notification on either side letting you know that there's somebody there. And then when you get into that sport mode, look at this. I love, again, this is strictly going to be for the N version of the vehicle, but you've got that really handy option here. So you can see your charge information, gear that you're in, what level you're in for the regenerative braking there as well. So it just gives you a very different look. Unfortunately, you're not going to find that in anything outside of the N trim level of the Ioniq 5. But I know that that is a heck of a lot of information, but that's everything that you need to know about the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Ioniq 5.